If you are struggling with your plants, then it might just be because of these 10 common misunderstandings most people have about their leafy pals. I mean, what on earth are those water droplets on the ends of your plant's leaves? How much water should you give your cacti? Will your plants fry in the sun? The answers to these conundrums might surprise you and may just help you become the plant whisperer you always dreamed you'd be. And this video is sponsored by Squarespace, but more on them in a jiffy. I've got this sedum here living on my bedroom windowsill, and for the longest time it confused the bejesus out of me. I think I probably bought it from IKEA about 4 years ago without doing any reading about how it grows or what it likes. I know, criminal isn't it? So I popped it in its ceramic pot and left it to live its best life in the brightest spot in my house. What a doting plant parent. Well, maybe not actually. The thing is, I kept noticing that the bleeding thing kept trying to escape the pot it was living in. "Why won't you grow normal?" I kept yelling at him, the poor sucker. I was expecting him to grow upwards like a normal plant, but all I was doing was displaying my inherent noobiness. If I'd actually read a little bit about this guy on the internet, then I would have found out that he has a sprawling, trailing growth habit, i.e. he doesn't want to grow up in a straight line at all. He wants to hang like the Fonz. Hey, yeah. And it's obvious now that I look at him, since that fateful day of me enlightening my tiny brain, I've left him to do his sprawling thing rather than tying him up a stick against his will and yelling him to grow upwards. And we're in a much better place now, thankfully. Look, he's pushing all his neighbours out of the way so he can stretch. The moral of this story is that not all plants grow the way you expect. They don't all want to grow upwards like you might assume. The Monstera deliciosa is a case in point. If you've not got this gal tied up to a stick or something, then our natural inclination is to leave the pot and sprawl all over your floor like a middle-aged man trying to do yoga for the first time. So don't fight it, my plant friend, let it do its thing. Check out this baby-faced Monstera I've got growing in my dining room. Looking pretty good, isn't he? How about this Ficus elastica teneki that happily sits on my living room windowsill? Seems happy with his lot in life too, doesn't he? Well, what do these two fellas have in common? I'll give you a couple of seconds. Yes, you spotted it. Neither of them are living in soil. They are both making home in a pot of just perlite. Yes, just perlite. In case you didn't know, perlite is just a super lightweight volcanic rock that we add to soil to make it lighter. In other words, it's plant gold. Now it took me absolutely ages to come to the realisation that our green buddies don't necessarily have to live in soil. I'm going back to my newbie days again when I was just starting out on my indoor jungle journey. Sometimes plants grow better in something entirely different. Just look at the Lecker Queen's channel. Her plants are thriving, and I think you can guess what her plants are living in. So don't confine yourself to soil. Have a little play with other materials. I bought these two monstrosities of an alocasia a couple of months back and popped them both into just perlite. Honestly, this wasn't my doing. They looked like a dog's dinner when I bought them, I promise. Alocasias in particular benefit from a super light soil mix, so I'm experimenting with them living in just perlite, and you can just start to see I'm reaping the rewards of that change. So stay tuned for more updates about their progress this year. That means subscribe to the channel, by the way. Right. Have you ever gone to water your green pals on a Saturday morning, only after checking each of them with your trusty moisture meter of course, noticed water droplets on the ends of the leaves and panicked that your plants are dying from overwatering? I mean, what is that? Is it a sign from God that you should just pack all this indoor jungle thing in? Are those droplets on the ends of the leaves a bad thing? Well, this, my plant friend, is called guttation. It's a process in plants where water is released from the tips or edges of leaves, and this occurs mainly at night when the stomata, which are the tiny pores on the surface of the leaves, are closed, preventing the plant from releasing water through transpiration. So basically, instead of transpiration, water in the cells is forced out through the leaf margins. But is it bad? Well, while it can be a sign that you are giving your plant too much water, as I'll explain in a bit, most of the time it's just a natural process that is pretty much harmless. I notice it tends to happen to lots of my green friends the morning after I've given them a good drink, and in this case it's nothing to worry about. If it is happening all the time to the same plant, then chances are you are indeed giving it too much water. The root system is flooded and the plant is trying to get rid of it any which way it can. So dial it back and become reacquainted with your moisture meter. This stuff here can make your plants seriously grumpy. And no, I'm not simply hating on the brand. Let me explain. This is of course an all-purpose fertilizer, just like this and so many others on the market, and if you're a good guardian you'll be giving your little green misters a taste every other week or so. The problem is though, is that they say they are all-purpose when this is in fact a little white lie. They're not really all-purpose, they're one purpose, leafy growth purpose. You see, Miracle-Gro is packed with nitrogen, and nitrogen is the gas that powers leafy growth. But what if you don't particularly want leafy growth? What if you have, let's say, a peace lily and you want it to do the thing that it hardly ever wants to do? Yeah, flower. In that case, besides praying, you need a feed that is high in phosphorus, like this particular version of Miracle-Gro. All-purpose feeds tend to be quite low in phosphorus, which might explain why your peace lily never ever flowers. You get the point. Maybe, just maybe, if you give it the right feed, you have a fighting chance of getting it to bloom again. Maybe. Have you got any cacti in your home? Let me know down below. I've got a few and I'm a big fan. I don't know about you, but I've always found watering them to be an almighty stressful experience. Can I get an amen? I mean, they hail from the desert, right? So they're used to going months and months without so much as a lick of water, and we need to mimic this in our homes of course. But when do you water and how much do you give? Let me show you the good, the bad and the ugly. The ugly first and then the good. While I'm doing that, let's chat about today's video sponsor, Squarespace. If you didn't know, Sheffield Made Plants has its very own website, and using Squarespace to set it all up was a breeze. Trust me, I had no idea where to even begin, but Squarespace made it all so easy, with easy to use templates and tools to make it all look pretty and actually function like a website. I'm sure you've got plenty of things you'd love to share with the world, so why not head over to squarespace.com for a free trial to check it all out for yourself and leave your mark on the world. And when you're ready to launch your very own little empire, follow my link in the description to bag yourself a 10% discount off your first purchase of a website or domain. Go get it, Tiger! So there you have it, a little dribble just won't cut it, I'm afraid. This is a common trap and one that Death a Cactus makes. Basically, when it rains in the desert, it tends to absolutely pee it down. This hydrates all living creatures and the circle of life goes on. And as always, we need to mimic this at home. So drench that bad boy as many times as you want and then forget about it for weeks until it's ready for another drench. None of this trickly nonsense. He really won't be happy. And how to tell when he needs a drink? Get your moisture meter of course, and wait until the soil is bone dry. Check out this gal here. This is Phoebe, my rather glorious Ficus elastica teneke, and she is fast becoming one of my favourite gals in the house. But don't tell Mrs. Sheffield, okay? Now, let's compare her to her younger cousin Fanny. I don't know why I call her Fanny, it just seems to fit. Bit weird though, innit? Anyway, what's the difference between the two? Yes, Phoebe has 2 legs and Fanny only has 1. But Phoebe didn't grow the extra leg by herself. No, she's got me to thank for that when I amputated her single leg a year ago and forced her to branch out. Without me, she'd be a single lanky specimen just like her father. The point of all this is that pruning your plant will most certainly not kill it. It will instead make it grow extra limbs and become a beautifully bushy specimen. Soft or hard pruning, it really doesn't matter. Plants always find a way to survive. If something's not growing to your liking, then simply give it a chop. Fortune favours the bold and all that. When you have a look at my plant collection, you'll probably notice that a lot of my green friends are sat on my windowsills. How can this be, Mr. Sheffield? Plants fry in the sun, surely. Well, there are a couple of reasons for this. Now, this might be a little controversial, but most plants can soak up more vitamin D than we tend to give them credit for. Read any book on the matter and you'll be scared into never letting a single ray of sunshine ever touch the leaves. But this is a big opportunity missed, in my opinion. The single biggest factor that will turn your little guy into the rock is light. And depriving him of sunlight means he'll be more machinist than rock. So have a cheeky experiment. If you want to prove me wrong and see if I'm talking a load of baloney, then start upping the time he spends on the sunbed. You might just be pleasantly surprised. But the second reason I can do this is because I live in the rainy armpit of the UK, Sheffield. That's where the name comes from, by the way. I'm not literally called Mr. Sheffield. Anyway, there's just not much sun to be had around here, let me tell you. And when it does show its feeble face, it's a little bit puny to say the least. So be sensible. If you live in the desert, experiment but be cautious. And what is the one word that is sacred in the plant community? Yes, you guessed it, humidity. Plants need 1000% humidity, right? Well, in my experience, not so much. Don't get me wrong, they love a bit of high humidity, no doubt, but the thing that upsets them most is inconsistent humidity. Many folks complain that their new plant looks like a shambles as soon as they bring it home from the store and blame it on the dry air in their home. In reality though, it's the change in humidity that is causing all the grief. You might think I'm splitting hairs, but there's an important distinction to be made. Blaming the dry air assumes that the plant will never be happy, but it's my theory that once a plant becomes accustomed to your home, it will be fine. Look at these Philodendron verrucosum plants I've got. Looking pretty good, aren't they? Not a blemish. Yet. Well, they are all offspring of their dearly departed mother, who looked like a dog's dinner when I got her last year, and this was all because she was homesick and needed time to settle in, bless her. The moral of the story is, don't chuck them in the bin when it all goes wrong. Give them consistency and they will learn to adapt. I mentioned the wonderful world of plant pruning a little earlier and how it can transform your little green buddies, but there is a particular plant that this doesn't really apply to, Monstera. Yes, prune your Monstera in this way, and unfortunately you're setting it up for failure and yourself up for months of self-doubt and pity. The good news is it's not you, it's the plant. To get the full lowdown, you really need to watch this video here. It will save you a ton of Monstera heartache. And don't forget to subscribe, my plant friend.